Hello everyone, welcome to our first session for the Blue Manager, so about coastal ecosystem. So this morning we will start with 4 different presentations. First with Antoine, who is going to talk about a global coastal ecosystem. We will have Corentin JEANROT about also mangroves, then Madison about understanding water circulation, and we will finish with Gilles, unfortunately not online because it's confidential, but for the jury about like the Fauna and Flora of the Cap de Nice. With us this morning we have Jean-Vincent de Ingrassa, yes, thank you, from the Métropole Nice Côte d'Azur, Natudive also president. We have also Martin Coglianoni, biologist and artist, founder of Coral Guardian, and we have Guillaume Leport from Blue Seeds, which is the program manager. So thank you so much for being with us. And so we will start with the first one. So let's welcome also Antoine on stage. Do I have Antoine? Yes. Okay, Antoine, sorry. So normally you're supposed to have the floor right now. So non Guillaume. Sorry, just like putting you on side. Yes. So Antoine, just for information, we have 15 minutes of presentation and then 50 minutes for questions. The floor is yours.
Okay. So nice to meet you, everyone, and moreover for those I never met before. So today I will just present to you my current internship within Conservation International. I'm doing for them, and the main task of this internship is to work and develop a global coastal ecosystem mapping. So with the focus on the 3 or 4 main ecosystems, and I will go in details regarding that. So briefly, as you all know, right now, coastal ecosystems are really crucial regarding climate change, but although regarding biodiversity services and all the many types of environmental ecosystem services for the local populations and worldwide. And Conservation International is one of the main NGOs worldwide, and they're currently working in several countries to implement projects, but also to implement programs, so directly projects on site, but also more programs linked to local political or even national politicals to support the protection of those ecosystems. So as I told you, many types of ecosystem services, as you already know, regarding carbon sequestration. We all know that mangroves are the most efficient ecosystem regarding this type of activities, but although provided other biodiversity ecosystem services. Currently, the estimated of those ecosystems is around almost $200 billion per year, globally, worldwide, and services and for this internship right now is divided within 3 main tasks. And the first main task is for sure to develop this global mapping for ecosystem services. For that, the idea is really to get a final tool easy to manage and to work with, providing the different informations regarding what I will be able to get, although in accordance with my superior and the CI vision. The second task is to work on a global assessment report from CI. So for that, the idea is there is already a template, and it will be to really move forward with this kind of informations provided by local partners in each country they're working with. And the third task is linked to Global Mangrove Alliance, where CI is directly working with, and here the idea is really to facilitate the communications between each parties involved, but also with all the stakeholders, and also develop more easy way of communications between parties, which can be sometimes a bit hard when we have to manage some type of stakeholders. So regarding the team and stakeholders, for me, only CI, so this is, as I told you, like a really large NGOs worldwide with more than 1,600 employees spread across 30 countries. the ideas for CI is that are not only focused on blue carbon ecosystem, coastal ecosystem, but we're working on different types of environmental services. So it can be linked to land, to although gender equity. So we can say that they're practically active on all the different SDGs right now through different projects and programs. This is a US based, so currently US company, US NGO. So currently they have some struggle with the national government inside, but they are glad to have partners and work worldwide with different governments, even if right now the US is a bit hard to manage. Regarding the team I work with currently, and I will only focus on people I work with. So there is for sure the CI global team based with the main leader based in US in Washington DC, and on my side I work currently with different divisions. So the ocean divisions, which is mainly focused on all type of marine conservation activities, sustainable fisheries, and climate resilience. So this is more the practical and project implementations team. There is the CI Blue Carbon program. So for this one, this is really focusing more on currently on the Southeast Asia area, and they have a really big focus on seagrass specifically. There is the CI, GIS, and remote sensing divisions. So currently, these divisions is a bit on stop due to lack of finance, and although because there is like a big remodeling on all the structures within CI, so the CI GIS right now is a bit is a bit on stop. And for my side, so my direct colleague, if I can say like that, because they are all around the world, but I'm working with the CI Moore Centers for Science and Solutions. So here the idea is that they're really focusing more on global program or even with national program than direct project implementations. And they have also focused really on the scientific aspects to provide advisory to stakeholders and all the governments. And I'm part of this division right now under Maya Claudia, which is my direct N+1. Just to briefly again develop at the initial project plans. So I will work until the end of August, and the tasks are divided between the 3 different missions. As we discussed with my superior, like for them, the really main focus is to develop this global mapping. So this is where I'm working right now on. Like I need to update a bit like this gun project, because right now it's not really right now regarding the updating for the activities on day-to-day. But I will go forward with what I've currently already done and what is expected to be until the end of August. Some financial aspects. So right now, there is already an annual budget for CI under over $300 million. The total expense is also high because they have many type of activities. And the financial aspect here, for me, there is no direct link budget directly linked to my activities for this internship, but I spent sometimes with partners to get some supports. But currently, the main ideas regarding the financial aspects is that it's more for them than for me regarding the cost I could have to do to them. The assumption and obstacles. So right now, as explained, this is divided by different missions. So the idea is that I need to work, and I'm currently working with different stakeholders and partners directly from CI worldwide to get all the data needed to first develop this map. So currently, it's currently ongoing. For sure, the obstacle I have right now is that there is there is no centralized data online, data set online. So I really need to focus on getting and gathering all those data before start to work with the mapping implementations. This is really for me the main obstacle for that. Regarding the global assessment reports, so for sure, working with directly projects, country projects manager to get those informations and answer the questionnaire. Right now, I have to get this assessment done. So the main obstacle here is to get feedback from people, because they don't choose to answer like on regular basis, like you have to chasing them a lot. And this is really the main issue with that for the moment. And regarding GMA, maintain communications and promoting new countries within the program, the main issues that even if there is currently a monthly communications by email, typically the idea is that the main obstacle is that as for the global assessment, there is lack of communications on regular basis, and they don't choose to share data easily. So the communications is really, for me, currently the main obstacle through the three different missions. So the impacts, there are some impacts for me, for sure, and for some impacts for them. Regarding the global mapping, impacts for me is that I'm learning a lot because I have to do many research directly from literatures, but although from their team, and after it's to use on daily basis the GIS, which is currently what I'm doing, although so it's really something quite new, even if I have already some teaching and courses with MARRES regarding GIS, but right now I'm using it on regular basis. The impact for them that's the final results typically, and the final results is really to develop an easy tool for them to get access to data directly, but also a tool to present to different stakeholders or investors when they want they're making the presentations. Because right now, if we are just working with like the literature basis and the rest, there is no big impact when they're discussing with different and external stakeholders. So for them, it's really to get this tool, and it will be the main impact. The global assessment reports, for me, is mainly to work with different stakeholders, getting a bigger network, but although I have a better knowledge regarding what they did in terms of proper assessment. And for them is to get an update regarding the scorecard and assessments they are looking for, and they have already started to develop. Regarding the GMA collaborations, so here the main impacts for me will be to, and yes, that being in touch with many different cultures, people, but also different organizations, and although get a better knowledge regarding what is GMA worldwide, typically what they are doing and how they can support through providing funds to direct countries in order to protect mangroves and conserve them. So this is really right now the main impacts. Here you can find some maps I've already done. So I've just put some examples because I have more than 100 maps already done. So regarding those one, this is focused on the lost mangroves between 1996 and 2020. So I did a ratio. Here you can see it's mainly for Indonesia, and you have other part of Philippines. You can see that the main loss in terms of mangroves area are mainly in the Philippines. So this is typically this type of currently maps I'm doing. Here it's quite the same example, but focusing in Latin America and Central America. So this is what I've done for that. Here you have the same for West Africa, but I also developed some maps regarding seagrass stock. So for the seagrass carbon organic stock, I use I used the median of 24.2 tons per hectares to develop this map. So this kind of map. So for that, although all the maps worldwide I created, it took a lot of time. Here it's an example because you have some difference between the other part regarding the carbon stock for the seagrass, and is the focus for Corsica mainly. So typically results plus next objectives. So for the global mapping, I took time, but right now I already developed a general layer with polygons representing the surface of mangroves and seagrass. I wasn't able to do it for tidal mulch because lack of data and issues with the mapping activities. So for that, I also have to develop some other vectors with this area per hectare. And the next objective is right now to get other indicators. So I will need to gather informations regarding the different indicators they are looking for. So right now, the next step will be to get those information for ecosystem services and try to get an extrapolations worldwide, even if it's a bit hard, but an extrapolations worldwide to get the amount per hectare for both the ecosystems, develop other types of indicators, and then be able to develop a Power BI tool enable to get the local map per countries or sub-regions, typically New Caledonia and not only France, because it's more efficient on this way, and get all the informations regarding the surface, the carbon organic stock, the ecosystem services, and everything like that. So the idea is to get this tool done by regarding the global report. So currently I'm in touch with different types of people, partners, but there is a lack of answering, as I told you. So the idea is to get more information and try to work on the development of the global assessment reports. So for that, I'm not the one that the biggest issue is really the lack of communication. So it really depends of the feedbacks from people and maintain communication within GMA. So right now I'm working and I'm doing the monthly basis for the parties where my superiors is working on, and ideas will be to maybe change the forms of communications to promote this easy way between the different parties communications to improve although the efficiency of the program. So right now this is what I'm doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Antoine. Perfect. Can you hear us? Yeah?
Yep.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, it's time now. You were in the 50 minutes, so time to open the floor to the question. So maybe I can start on site with Jean-Vincent, then I will go to Martin.
Hi, Antoine. Thank you for your presentation. Can you come back on the finance aspect? I don't know if we have the slides. Yes, can you explain the differences between continents, America, Asia, Pacific, Africa?
In terms of field program?
Yeah, in terms of financial aspect, the
yeah. So the idea is that with this file, that to show the difference within the different programs of CI or divisions of CI, the different amount budget allocated per year. So this is really the ideas of promoting that. Here, the field programs is mainly when they are developing programs and although projects on site. So this is mainly this kind of activities. It's more linked to directly project implementations.
Okay, this is not a political will or...
No, it's not a political will. It's just regarding when they like for them, as they have many types of partners worldwide, and they have more sometimes preferred countries, because there are some countries where with them it's typically hard to work and to implement projects. But this is not their wish to split by typically this. It's mainly on on yearly basis, like, okay, there is some new opportunities because there are some countries which are really more involved within conservations, and they are really more involved with type of NGOs partnerships. So that's why they are moving more with those countries, to those geographical areas, and they are implementing project there.
Okay. And my second question is about your maps.
Yep.
What will you need to improve the efficiency, maybe the accuracy of your maps?
So the idea is right now that I developed, like I told you, one big layer worldwide. So for them, we can after they can zoom it, but the idea is that with the final tool, they will not have only a screenshot or a PDF image for just one country, which is okay. It can be nice, but if they want to get a zoom on specific area in each country, so the idea is that through Power BI be able to implement and to implement directly the layers and the maps within this map tool. And starting from that, with this final tool, they can select the countries and the data they want. But when they will have a look on the map, they will be able really to zoom if they would like to get some specific area locations and have the different maps updated directly for that.
Yeah, this was my idea to maybe I can click on the pixel, and I have the information about the location exactly.
Yeah, regarding the pixel, I don't think there is a big sense. Like the pixel I've done right now, it's 5 kilometers square meters, because like I had to work initially with more than 200,000 entities, to work with that. So it was really hard. So I will see if I can just implement things like that. Because for them, it's maybe not like the specific area. I will not be able, because for the moment, what I get is global average information. So this is what I'm doing, because it's really hard after to move with specific regions. But the idea is starting from this point, after for each countries and sub-regions, they will be able just to update the data within this tool if they have some updated data regarding, like, specifically the carbon organic sequestration. For sure, there is a huge difference between mangroves in the Red Sea or mangroves in Indonesia typically. But for the moment, what I did is for sure to get this average. But after that, for each country, they will have a direct access to the tool and the data, and they will be able to update the data directly for some countries. So it will be also a more interactive and keep learning tool.
Okay, thank you.
Cool, thanks. I guess Martin, if you have any questions.
Yes, thank you, Antoine, for the presentation. I have many questions, but let's start. My question is, okay, you work with the Conservation International for the how to evaluate loss of mangrove and seagrass, right? And
yeah, this was the first tool, and after it's more the global mapping with all information I can gather.
So how do you because I have this question, like how do you know like mangrove disappear at this spot, or it's still there, like you have a graph with the green to the red, where this information comes from, like at the beginning. So the information you use, how do you know that?
So what I did to get this information, that for typically for loss, because for the rest there will maybe not a nonsense, because it will be only focused on the last year. But for mangroves, as this is the most ecosystem worked blue carbon ecosystem where people work on it, I was able to get 2 layers. One layer from 1996 globally, and 1 layer for 2020. So after just working with GIS, when you just make the division, the subtractions between 2020 and 1996, and then you get this new layers with the polygons for the loss. And gathering that after, it used to make the comparison between 1996 and this new one, to get in the, and you can do it directly in the attribution table. So just developing things like that, and after you make the rasterizations for that, just implementing this fishnet and just provide this type of data.
Okay, so it's the loss starting in 96, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know what was before 1996 in your map?
No, I wasn't.
So you consider.
I wasn't able to find data. Like, it's not me reconsidering that. It just was regarding I get in terms of data. I was able to get the map for 1996, like the state of mangroves 1996, and and one layer for 2020.
Okay. And another question: do you have other collaboration with other NGOs or governments to gather this information? For example, in Indonesia, is there other collaboration?
So for the moment, like, the collaboration is really limited. I know that in Indonesia, typically they are currently developing on really an update layers and map regarding current mangroves in the country, but currently this information are restricted. CI doesn't have a direct access to those data, so I wasn't able to get those things. But for sure, as soon as those maps are available, even if it's not on public space, but if CI can have an access to those type of informations, then they will be able to do the same tool. And it's more very important because currently, right now, even if I developed those big layers worldwide, I wasn't working with the countries and sub-region. But right now, I already work to develop a global, currently those layers, including countries and sub-region.
Okay. And and one last question.
Last one.
Yeah, Crystal, one last question. No, it's time for Guillaume. Okay. Okay.
A last question, if you want, Martin, from you.
Last question. Why did you choose this internship, like this project? What motivated you in doing this for the future, for your job, or I don't know?
Typically, I always wanted to work with NGOs. I know CI from a while. I know all the my N+1s for a while, because previously in my job, I worked with her. I know the types of work she is doing and what CI is doing. And as I always wanted to work with blue carbon ecosystems, it was really an opportunity, first of all, to work with this type of NGOs, but also this type of tools, because even if scientific working is important and the literature is really nice, but currently NGOs need to get funds. This is always the main ideas, and I can understand that when you are talking with investors, which are not people really with like a big knowledge, or they don't want to read scientific paper or the rest. For them, they are looking for the easy tool. And for me, it's really important to get this type of tools to promote all the conservations to the different stakeholders.
Okay, thank you, Antoine.
Okay, then we go to Guillaume.
Hi, Antoine. Thank you very much for the presentation. I was really interested, especially because we as well at Blue Seeds, my company, we work on like mapping of coastal ecosystem, especially Posidonia oceanica in the Med. So it was really a special presentation for me. I have two questions that are related. So you were showing us some maps regarding the loss of mangroves. Did you have some data and some maps as well of the main threats and pressures that are responsible for the loss? And do you have some main differences between the different coastal ecosystem that you are assessing? And the second question that is related is, what is the final main objective of this kind of tool? Is it a decision-making tool that is internal at CI to know where they need to focus their conservation efforts? Is it a tool that is that will be used by national government to know where they need to focus their conservation effort, where they need to put maybe coastal and marine protected areas? Or is it just at this stage, let's say, a scientific baseline tool that is used only to know where are the gaps in terms of data?
So, like, really interesting question regarding the divers for the lost tendencies and the main threats and the rest. So currently, I have already some information regarding mangroves provided directly by a colleague. But the idea is that for those divers, it's not currently really focused on geographical areas, so it's more globally assessment. So this is the main things. The idea is with this tool is that finally, maybe not with a map, because with some maps it can be some hard, to get the divers, because we will not have the direct impacts on that, because there is a lack of data. Typically, I don't know, like deforestations represents 50% of the loss for this type of area. It's a bit hard right now to gather all those information. So after it, just making some research, improvement, so some things like that, it will be done as soon as there is all the data. But right now, I don't have the time to do it, because I'm alone working on the map right now, because the GIS team is stopped. So it's a bit hard for me to get all those data. But this is the main things regarding the divers. For this tool by itself, so first, it's a tool which will be used, although first of all by interns, because they will be able although to improve it. As soon as they have the time and they have the way to, and I can explain them how to directly implement news data, select by countries and the rest. After, it will be for them internally for decision making, because right now with although GMA, but although with their own projects, the idea is to get the project's locations, or if they have although the maps for the projects, it will be wonderful, but I don't know right now if they have the maps of every project they're developing, but this is the main way to do it. So the idea is for them, it will be also, in terms of strategy next year, like, okay, we know that in these countries there is a change, or there is regarding the scorecards, because the scorecards can be although implementing within this tool for them, just to be sure, like, okay, there is the new opportunities more in these countries, so we can move forward with that. But it can be although for presentations for external stakeholders, because sometimes you're working with some countries, okay, they can be aware regarding, for some countries like Indonesia, they will have the new updated map, but typically if you're working with some countries in Africa, or the countries, like, for them, they don't have directly done this work, so they are not aware, they don't have direct access to that. So the idea is for them, it will be although to be able to present an easy way, like, okay, there is the maps, these maps, you have those seagrass of your countries there, those mangroves there, and here you can select all this information regarding this ecosystem you would like to get right now within graphs. So this is although this type of tools, finally, which will be used. So this is the way to go, if I can say.
Thank you, Antoine.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot for all your questions, Antoine. We are right in time, so thank you again. I think we can move on then to the next person. So it's going to be Corentin. Corentin, are you with us?
Hello.
Sorry, but I will need to go. I have a meeting like in 10 minutes, so I need to prepare things, and after let's continue. But I will see if I can join again. Thanks a lot for your time this morning. If you have any question, please feel free to reach out. And Corentin, good luck. It will be done.
I hope you will connect back to the YouTube and give some strength to the fellow manager. See you, Antoine. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Corentin. Well, the floor is going to be yours. As same for Antoine, 15 minutes of presentation and then 15 minutes of question. I'm adding your slides and you're good to go.
Great, thank you. So hello, everybody. Today I'll be presenting my professional project, which was about developing a mangrove restoration methodology on the voluntary carbon market with my company called the Ecosystem Restoration Standard. So we'll skip over the overview and jump straight into the introduction. So the core problem that we're facing, as Antoine was just mentioning, is that we have lost a lot of mangrove around the world, and what's remaining is at direct risk of collapsing in the next few years. And so some solutions include either active restoration by directly planting propagules or small trees, or passive restoration by, let's say, simply restoring the ecological conditions to allow for restoration to happen by itself. But the main issues at stake with both are a major lack of funding worldwide, quite poor community engagement, which is failing in most projects, and either poor choice of location or poor choice of restoration techniques, or both. Which brings me to my role at ERS and the role of my company. So this clearly shows that there is an urgency for the creation of a holistic methodology for the restoration of mangroves to allow them to have more financing, stronger community pillars, and stronger restoration techniques. So this should be built on 3 strong pillars. So carbon, because without the strong carbon quantification, you don't get the carbon credits, you don't get the money. Strong livelihoods, interventions, and stakeholder engagement, without which the project typically fails, and strong ecological recovery to bring back diversity, biodiversity, and not only plant trees for the sake of planting trees. So just a quick disclaimer to start off with. So the mangrove restoration methodology was actually deprioritized to 2026 as soon as I joined the company. This was due to the acquisition of Equitable Earth, a new company that we acquired recently that works in conservation for us to allow to get into this market quicker. And we also released, or we are in the process of releasing the new version of our terrestrial ecosystem restoration methodology, which has taken a lot of time. And our CEO left the company in March. So there was a lot of changes in when I joined this project, but I still managed to get quite a lot done in this time frame and with these constraints. And I will jump into that. So many objectives, primary, secondary, long-term, short-term, but just in terms of general mapping of objectives, my focus was to draft a first version of the methodology on mangroves, or at least try to identify all the elements that we need to then be able to operationalize this methodology and get a first batch of projects certified, which would then allow us to try and raise the bar and become one of the top ecosystem restoration standards on the market, on the VCM, and then continue developing more versions of this methodology and new versions of other blue carbon methodologies like seagrass, for example. So in terms of timeline, this is really small, I'm realizing, but just to give you a quick overview. So due to these changes, milestone 1, 2, and 3 were the main ones that I was focusing on, and the rest was slightly pushed back. And milestone 5, which is like the general work on other projects within the company, like terrestrial ecosystem restoration, is what took a bulk of the time. So I mainly ended up spending time on milestone 5, but the rest will be pushed instead to, now it says October, but will be pushed back to the end of the year and early next year. But let's jump into some results and like what I've found so far, which is the most interesting part. So I first focused on a deep dive into a literature review, and the main findings were that literature on mangrove restoration and mangrove carbon quantification is either very high level or too specific. Being high level, there's a lot of like IPCC documents giving a lot of default values, default formula, default equations to help countries, mainly for the NDCs, their nationally determined contributions, to have some calculations, but it's very high level for what we're trying to do as a standard body. And some of the research is also too specific, like providing some very specific ground protocols, a strong focus on certain regions, like a lot of in India, Indonesia, and which again is an issue for us because we're trying to have something that's standardized but yet specific in each region. The third finding that I had is that there is no standardized and completely error-free methodology to study or to calculate the carbon stock of mangrove ecosystems, which begs for a tailored approach, which I'm going to jump into later on. However, I found some interesting elements for SOC, which is the soil organic carbon, which is the main carbon sink in mangrove ecosystems. And that's definitely something that we have to take into consideration, because more carbon, more credits, more money for the projects in general. So I also went ahead and did a benchmark of other standards that currently exist on the VCM and that certify mangrove ecosystems, to be able to find what carbon pools we should include in our methodology. So of course, AGB and BGB, which are above ground biomass, below ground biomass, are the main carbon pools across any ecosystems or nature-based solutions. Soil organic carbon is the main new one, as in our current terrestrial ecosystem restoration methodology. Soil organic carbon is considered to be small enough to be disregarded, but in mangrove it can be up to 50 to 60% of the total carbon stock in the ecosystem. So it's very important to take into consideration, but very hard to estimate and calculate, which was a main challenge. The rest were considered to be either not included or optional, due to the fact that they were optional or not included in the other standards, being Vera and Gold standards, which are the main competitors of our company. Then I went ahead and jumped into the carbon sources, which can stem from this from this ecosystem, because you have to find the balance between how much the ecosystem sequesters and how much it emits, because you need to deduce this as like adjustment factors in the calculations. And so the main ones are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, which can stem from different sources. So respiration and decomposition of dead organic material, denutrification, which is a natural process in mangrove ecosystems to avoid eutrophication of the ecosystem, the burning of biomass from site preparation techniques like prescribed burns, so pretty much to prepare the site to then lay the ground for the restoration, and fossil fuel use. So the first two categories are still to be determined, because they're also very difficult to calculate, and they're very much a case by case, depending on the ecosystem and the region, because emissions will vary a lot, and also the state of degradation of the site. The burning of biomass is definitely a yes to be included, and that's something we already do for terrestrial ecosystem restoration, but we need to adapt for mangrove. But there can be significant amount of emissions from this source. And fossil fuel use, just like most carbon standards, it's considered to be de minimis, which is it's small enough to be disregarded. And fossil fuel use is just the emissions due to the use of machinery or trucks to transport anything, and it's small enough to be disregarded usually. I also did a deep dive into successful projects to see what was working on the market currently and what are the main learnings we should include in our methodology to be as robust as possible. And so I present here the case study of Mikoko Pamoja, which is one of the first successful community-based blue carbon project on the VCM, and it was certified by Plan Vivo, which is a Scottish standard body. And the main best practices is that they put a strong focus on finding alternative livelihoods for the community on the ground by establishing some woodlots for fuel wood to prevent the community to depend on the mangrove ecosystem and just having an alternative plot of land where they could just harvest some wood. They also did a strong work on awareness raising with the community and trying to find buy-in, and with a very strong participatory approach and a very strong benefit sharing approach, with a very specific amount of money having to go back to the ground and to the community, and also strong grievance mechanism and transparency to raise any grievances or conflicts that might arise. However, some main challenges was the very rapid changing environmental conditions with sedimentation and impact of waves. Also, the finding the balance between restoration and conservation of mangroves, because conservation requires a lot less resources and is a lot easier to do, while restoration is very expensive. So that was left out at the benefits of conservation mainly. And also the fact that there was no formal protection for the restoration site and conservation sites, meaning that they were still being encroached upon by surrounding communities. And they also did not consider this soil organic carbon that I was mentioning, which is a main source of carbon, so a main source of credits. But due to the fact that it was too difficult to calculate, they didn't include it, which is a main challenge that we're trying to solve. The last main learning, so from the field, just for a quick context, I didn't go on the field in the past few months, but I've been working for this company for a bit now, and we went to the field a couple years ago to visit some mangrove projects, and I thought it was interesting to include it here. And some main learnings from those field experiences was that a lot of projects are very small compared to terrestrial forest. There's quite some issues with carbon credits and institutions, because a lot of carbon credits for blue carbon are institutionalized or public domain, which makes it hard to certify and sell. As just mentioned, changing climatic conditions for mangroves specifically are the main challenge. There's the main challenge of finding alternative livelihoods, because the community relies on the mangrove most times, and that's the reason why they're being destroyed. And mangrove restoration is usually a lot more expensive than terrestrial restoration, and even more than conservation, which is usually less resource intensive. Now a deep dive into the 3 different pillars and what I found in terms of results. So the soil organic carbon was the main point that I've been mentioning, and we have been in touch with the Coastal Carbon Network, which is a working group from the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center in the US, and they created what's called the Coastal Carbon Atlas, which is a publicly available data set, which they aggregated all the research done on soil organic carbon around the world on mangroves, and put it into a map to be able to draw the information from. However, it's still like high level and quite difficult to use at this stage, the tool itself. And so we're in discussions to potentially have a partnership with them for them to provide us with some maps directly on a per project basis. So we're still exploring this, but that would be a main advancement and a main like innovation in the field of standard body certification. For above ground biomass, so we're still exploring. Also, currently we're working with Chloris for our terrestrial ecosystem restoration projects, and we're still exploring how we can work with them on AGB as well. But in the short term, we could also use some default value data sets, but the problem is in most projects, they're quite outdated and non-specific. In terms of livelihoods, the main takeaways that we had from speaking with Miguel Cifuentes, which I was put in touch by Maricruz, thank you if you're listening, with Jason Donofrio from the National Marine Sanctuary and the Mikoko Pamoja project, is that main takeaways is that there's too low ground return on investment for the communities, which is why it's failing most times. Communities don't have the benefits from the project, so they don't support it, so it fails. So which begs for the need for strong benefit sharing mechanisms and strong alternative livelihoods, and that will help the community's adaptiveness and resilience to those threats. In terms of ecological recovery, so we got some very valuable inputs from Heather Stewart, which is PhD in mangrove ecology in the US and Caribbean islands. And what we need to consider in this methodology are what is the current natural regeneration at the site to be able to best tailor ecological interventions? What are the main threats and stressors? What is the hydrological profile and the site elevation? What is the sediment type? What are the nursery procedures? And also, is there a need for a green-gray infrastructure, a hybrid approach, meaning like should they build seawalls, sea hives, et cetera, et cetera. Additional elements, I'm not going to jump into the left part. It's just we started building a document architecture structure to be able to visualize what we should have in each section and what's missing, and some key points that we have to consider according to the 3 main pillars, which I mentioned. And on the right-hand side, it's just showing who we've been working with for the co-development of this methodology. So we're actively working with Bond, which is an NGO based in Madagascar, which does some amazing work. Also Replanet in the UK, Fundación Naturaleza in Panama, and the Value Network Ventures, which is a project developer in India, which has also provided some strong insights. Now, in terms of pending questions and future work, I'm seeing that I don't have so much time left, but I'm just going to jump into some main ones. So we need to make sure that the Coastal Carbon Atlas can provide us with maps for all project areas and what will be the cost associated with this, because that's a main point. Also, we need to make sure to understand how we can educate buyers and raise the bar well enough to justify higher prices, because there's stronger credits and more valuable credits. Also, how do we figure out the AGB? Can Chloris provide us with this data or not? And et cetera, et cetera. For future improvements, so continue exploring this partnership with the Coastal Carbon Network. I need to reach out to Tania Romero from the Smithsonian Tropical Institute, which could bring us some valuable inputs on field calibration to have more specific carbon sequestration data on the ground. And we need to further work with those project developers to have insights. Critical thinking, so just some main points. What I came up to realize is the main difference between research and the private sector. So I can see that the private sector works a lot faster. There's a lot more changing. There's more money, but it's also the decision is held in the hands a handful of people, which make the decision. And there's also a lot of changes, rapid changes through time. So it's difficult to navigate sometimes. There's also the main constraints of finance, because currently the field of the VCM doesn't make a lot of money, also because of a lot of scandals that have been happening in the past. So it's how do we deal with those financial constraints to have strong pillars, a strong methodology, and yet having return on investment. Interpersonal dynamics are very very difficult to navigate. I found, trying to work with other team, integrating feedback and concerns of everybody is something that we've bumped into and that delays the work a lot. I can further talk about it in Q&A if you want. And then the main point is the inherent flaws of the carbon market, which I found. I think the main point is that it's hard to see the direct impact of the work, because in carbon market, you get stuck into a lot of small details in very high philosophical discussions about things like additionality, leakage, dynamic baseline, et cetera, which is very high level concepts that are very important to consider for a restoration projects. And yet it's okay, but are the trees actually being planted? Is the community actually getting the benefits? It seems very disconnected, and yet it's intrinsically linked. And I think there's also the challenge of the fact that buyers have a lot of power, and yet they have a major lack of knowledge on the market. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Corentin. Okay, I will again open the floor to question, perhaps this time the other way around. Guillaume, if you want to start.
Yes, thank you very much, Corentin. I have 2 questions and a half. The first question is related to the different issues you mentioned. So there are a lot of challenging issues in your work, like the question of the carbon rights, the benefit sharing. We've seen that also on the field, because I think you've met my colleague Timothy in October, and is working with Marie-Claude on the field in Guinea-Bissau as well on those topics. And the importance of making sure that the money is actually going to the local communities working on restoration projects is very important. And I wanted to know how you are thinking of addressing those issues and making sure that you are also mentioning the reduced size of mangrove restoration project compared to terrestrial projects, and how do you make sure as well that the project will be, let's say, profitable enough to make sure that some investor will be willing to invest in them?
Yeah, thank you. So the first question was about how to bring money to the ground and make sure there's strong benefit sharing. I think, to sort of replicate, there are things that are being done currently that are working quite well, with the example of the Mikoko Pamoja project. So Plan Vivo specifically is very much based on livelihoods, and they request a specific percentage of the money of the project, of the budget of the project, to go directly to the ground, and for this money to be specifically managed by a committee built from the ground up, from the communities on the ground, and for this money to be managed by them, for the community, and not imposed by the standard body. So this is something that we're definitely considering, because it's not up to anyone else to decide where the money should go apart from the communities that are directly being affected. That creates the problem of, okay, but the buyers, it's less return on investment for the buyers, but then it's what I was mentioning. How do you educate them to make sure that without strong community pillars, you don't have return on investment at all, because the project will fail. So we have an external relations team internally that's working a lot on webinars and classes to educate buyers and to show how, you know, you need to reduce the return on investment if you want the project to be sustainable in the long term. So that's one. And then how do you deal with the smallness of the project? Well, they are smaller in general, but the main advantage of mangrove is that they sequester 3 to 5 times more carbon than terrestrial ecosystems. So it's smaller, but then you compensate by the fact that you get more credits from it. Even more if you include the soil organic carbon, which is where most of this carbon stock is, which is why we have this main challenge of having, you know, managing to precisely calculate it to then be able to get the credits from this carbon pool. And so that compensates the size, but then it's more expensive because you don't get the economies of scale from a bigger project. But hopefully that compensates, and that's what's been shown on other projects. Again, yeah, that's also part of educating the buyers on showing that, yes, maybe they're more expensive, but also it's more carbon, hopefully stronger benefits, because it's not only the biodiversity, but it's also like protecting coastlines, protecting communities, protecting infrastructure, and the loss compared would be huge because.
Yeah, thank you. And just one last question. I will give you only 30 seconds to give me, let's say, an elevator pitch. I am a buyer and I already work with Plan Vivo, Gold Standard, Vera, etc. Why should I choose your company and your methodology instead of others?
So our methodology is typically, so we've built a lot of internal processes with a certification platform, a field app, to very much expedite the process and reduce the time to certification. The problem with other certification bodies is that it can take up to 2 years to certify a project, so you don't get your money before 2 years. We're trying to crunch this and have it within 6 months. So that's one. And then we also have the strong livelihoods pillar from Plan Vivo, but also the strong carbon quantification from Vera. And we're trying to blend these two and make it into a strong holistic methodology. And that was the main feedback from buyers and stakeholders, is that we want the science from Vera and the livelihoods from Plan Vivo into one. And that's definitely the work that we're trying to do. And so far, so good, I think. We're getting there.
Thank you, Corentin.
You're welcome.
Hi, Corentin. Thank you very much for the presentation. So my questions, for me, it's really abstract, the term of buyers. So can you please tell me, give us an example of what is a buyer and maybe a name of a company that can buy. And you said that you educate buyers. In what sense do you educate buyers?
Yeah. For the buyers, so we work on the voluntary carbon market. So it's only it's any big company that tries to buy carbon credits for compensation of their emissions. So the company, any large corporation would do a carbon quantification of their emissions, and then it's like, okay, how do we reduce internally, and what we can't reduce, how do we compensate it? Buying our credits, and I mean. It can be Microsoft, Netflix, Orange, Bouygues, whatever major company, Total, Shell, that are trying to buy back their consciousness in a way. For education, so it goes mainly because those big companies, they're being told that if they don't invest in carbon, or if they don't compensate, it's bad marketing for them. They need to, they have to, and they have the money, so they are the main ones being able to do that. But they also, when you're in the business of petrol or in the business of telecommunications, you usually have no clue about what's going on in a ecosystem restoration project. And so you always try to crunch, in the very capitalistic mindset, you're trying to crunch the cost and crunch the price and have the best credits for the lowest price. but it's about educating either through conferences, webinars. How do you tell them, well, this is the real costs of what it takes to build a tree and keep it in the ground through the community. So
thank you, Corentin. My next question is about the local communities. I feel in your presentation, and you said it in like a sentence at the end, that there is a disconnection between ecosystem communities and buyers, you know, and the carbon credit. How do you consider local communities? Do they have their word on saying we don't want a mangrove here, or we want to do it here, or whatever? You know, like, do they have a weight in the talks, or they have to follow?
Yeah, okay. Multi-level question, but it's so the requirements that we have is that usually the project comes from a project proponent or project developer on the ground, and then we would request strong criteria from them to interact with the communities, and then that will depend on what kind of communities you have. It's like, is the community indigenous? Is it a local community? Do they have customary rights to the land? Do they not have customary rights? Is it a private land? Is it public land? And then based on those categories that they would have to map in a stakeholder mapping, you would have different interactions with each and different obligations. So, you know, the strongest one would be an indigenous community with customary rights on the land. In this case, it's, well, you need to build pretty much the whole project in collaboration with them, taking into consideration needs, aspirations, cultural values, and then you need to keep meeting notes, community consultation notes. You need to build a benefit sharing plan with them. You need to, et cetera, et cetera. And the further down you go into the pipe, it's like, if it's a private land with no local community directly impacted, then who are you? I mean, we can't really say anything about, you need to go see this community 10 kilometers away to integrate them.
Do they understand that they are planting mangroves, for example, to compensate carbon credit for big companies? You know, the mechanism, do they understand the mechanism of what they are doing, you know?
The developers definitely do, because they're asking to be certified by us, a carbon standard. But then it's the community down the line. I think it depends. From my experience, they don't really care. Or from what we've heard, it's like, well, we have this ecosystem that's collapsing. We don't have the money for it. We need food to eat. At the end of the day, we need to have a healthy ecosystem. We need the money. Wherever the money comes from, we don't care. We want the money, and we want to be able to decide for ourselves on how we use it, and not on like someone in Europe telling us how to use it. But whether it comes from Shell or Orange.
Okay, great. And one last question, you know, with a quick answer. It's more about you. Do you believe in carbon credit after you did all this study? Do you believe in the efficiency of carbon credits?
That was the very last point that I was about to mention, but I was out of time. For me, it's challenging because there's so many scandals about it. It's still very much in a very capitalistic, economy-driven mindset, which also has created this problem of ecosystem destruction. And yet, to this day, it's still the main financing tool for the most rapid, consequent, and sustainable financing tool for ecosystem restoration. So it's a very fine line to walk between how do you get this money to the ground without having to crunch costs, crunch numbers, and I want to believe it.
What do you think?
I want to believe it.
What's your position?
I mean, I worked for it. I've worked for it in the past 2 or 3 years. I want to believe in it. I think we're still waiting to certify a significant amount of projects to see the results. And, you know, I feel like down the line, let's see, like 2, 3, 5 years from now, if it's still not functioning, it's like, let's try something else. Let's try something new, because we can't spend forever. Like, ecosystems are collapsing on the daily, and we need urgent solutions. So
thank you, Corentin. Thank you for the answers.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm leaving the floor to Jean-Vincent.
Thank you. So I continue in the line of Martin, because I have this question about your opinion, your philosophy about the credit carbon. Maybe it's a way to pollute without guilty, you know. So do you have any ideas on how to finance restoration project without carbon credits?
I mean, there are some. I was talking to Miguel Cifuentes, actually, the researcher, and he was mentioning there's like a lot of how do they call it? It's like participatory philanthropy or something like this. It's like agreements with companies to or strong or like rich people pretty much to like secure a significant amount of funding, but without having the counterpart of any carbon credits or any type of credits to compensate. And I think it's a financing tool that's being developed, but it's still like very much in the works of it. It's like, okay, but what do they get in return? They can just pull out anytime. But for me, it's like, it's true. Like in my mind, there is like 1% of the planet that owns more than or as much as 50% of the bottom half of the people. And there is somehow we need to redistribute. There needs to be a resharing. And it's like this one people that own millions and millions and billions of euros. There needs to be a giving back mechanism, and like this active philanthropy would be a main way, but also philanthropy is on the will of everybody. It's like if you don't want to give your money, you don't want to give it. So very challenging. Also like government funding, but government funding, we know that they need to split across causes. It's not just ecosystem restoration. So there's also like the debt to conservation, like those countries buying back debt for ecosystem restoration is happening between the US and Indonesia, I think, through Conservation International, I think Antoine was mentioning, where like, yeah, the US is buying back the debt of Indonesia, and they would have to use the money for ecosystem restoration. I think that's a great tool. It has proven to work. Let's see if it continues.
Yes, this is a tough question.
Yeah.
So come back in the field, more practical. If you can make a classification, what were the 2 or 3 main problems that you observed in the field?
In the field, the main problems. So I think it's, like in a lot of cases, I was talking about the passive restoration. In a lot of cases for mangrove, it only takes to like to restore the hydrological network, which has been destroyed due to like infrastructure building or creating some farmlands. So it only takes recreating the hydrological profile, and then mangroves just thrives by itself. But that costs a lot, and we wouldn't think so. That costs in like excavators and heavy machinery. And this is the main bulk of the price of a restoration project, which is not being taken into consideration in the prices usually. So that's the main blocker, is how do you show that it doesn't only take planting trees, because beyond the carbon market, it's like, all the solution is like 1 tree, €1, or 1 tree, however much. But if you don't need to actually plant the trees, you just need to restore the hydrology. There's a mismatch here. And other problems on the field, I think, is the protection of the sites, because a lot of mangrove is being destroyed because the community relies on it, mainly for fuel wood, which I was mentioning. They're cutting down the trees to get some charcoal to just cook at the end of the day. And if this one community is convinced, then maybe the next community over, like 5 kilometers down, will still be cutting down the mangrove because they're not being included in the project. So it's like, how do you take all the communities in a perimeter that's significant enough and convince them all to be like, this is one forest, it's protecting your community. And how do you build like a woodlot here so that, okay, you have trees growing just for you to cut them down, and have a management plan down the line to make sure that, this is regenerating and the mangrove is constantly protected. That's the main challenge that needs to be solved as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Do we have a last question? We still have perhaps like a couple of minutes. If not, I can show that you have been, yeah? Okay, Guillaume, I leave you.
I want to open the floor to another topic. I don't know if you have an idea on that or if your company is working on that, but you are working on carbon credits. Do you have an idea? Do you make some exploration about biodiversity credit or certification, because it's the new trend? So
Yeah,
Are you that? What's your thought on that?
That's the question I was expecting actually among one of you. Main topic in the field. But how do you quantify biodiversity is the major question mark that everybody has and that nobody manages to solve. Vera has just launched their new biodiversity methodology, so they are the pioneers to do so. It hasn't certified any projects yet. So it's like, hey, we have something, but we don't certify. Super interesting. That's also an alternative for new financing. But how do you it's so much work to know how to find scalable solutions to quantify biodiversity in a significant enough way that so far it's a bit like deep sea mining. We don't know what the return on investment will be. So nobody kind of dares to do it because it's so much investment work for we don't know what's going to come back. So we're not exploring it right now because we have other financial constraints. So it's too many resources for too big of a question mark. But down the line, it's like we're very much up for research and development in our company. So very interesting topic. Not the priority right now, to be very honest.
Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks, Corentin. You have also some people online just cheering for you. So I'm just yes.
Amy. Oh, so nice. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, well, thanks again. So it's time for a break, but of course, stay with us. We will come back at 11 sharp, and we will continue with Madison going to Denmark and so understanding water circulation and turbulence. So yeah, thanks, and we'll see you in a bit. We're just taking a little break. See you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Donc à 11h.
So hello back. Sorry for that. So we're back live. So for the next session, because after we will not be live, but we do have people in the room, so that's all good. So we will go to Denmark, starting with Madison, and then we will finish with Gilles. So he will talk about the Cap de Nice. With us also still the jury members. So I have Jean-Vincent. We have also Guillaume Leport and Martin. And we will start the first presentation with Madison. So I will welcome you on stage. Hi, Madison.
How are you guys all doing over there?
Hey, yeah, we can hear you perfectly. Okay, so the floor is going to be yours. So you will have 50 minutes to present and then 50 minutes of questions. I will add your slides and start whenever you're ready.
Okay, just full disclosure, I woke up a bit sick this morning, so I have like a lozenge in to avoid coughing so much. So bear with me.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Madison. Today, I'm going to be presenting my research on using the Deal oxygen method to assess for metabolic health of Zostera marina meadows in the Kerteminde Fjord. As mentioned, I'm currently in Denmark. I'm working at the Southern Denmark University. And my aim of this project is to integrate continuous oxygen monitoring with environmental variables to be able to better understand the seagrass ecosystem functions under changing climatic conditions. So for a bit of the background here, so seagrass meadows play a crucial role in coastal ecosystem health. They serve as natural oxygen producers, carbon sinks, biodiversity hotspots. However, across Denmark, many of the fjord systems have suffered from eutrophication and oxygen depletion. Some of them have even been declared ecologically dead. which is quite shocking. However, this particular fjord that I'm working in, the Kerteminde Fjord, it remains an exception. It's still very fragile, yet it's a functioning ecosystem, and it's really kind of anchored by the Zostera marina, the eelgrass beds that it has, and until now, well, until a few months ago, it remained largely under monitored. And my primary goal is to investigate investigate the deal and seasonal variations in dissolved oxygen across the vertical water column of the Kerteminde Fjord. That I'm going to be doing this by focusing on the metabolic dynamics of Zostera marina. And overall, I aim to be able to better understand its role in coastal carbon cycling and the capacity to buffer against climate-driven stressors. And then my secondary goal, I aim to be able to quantify vertical oxygen fluxes from the surface to sediment using higher frequency sensor data, and then to be able to evaluate from there the influences of the environmental drivers such as light, temperature, and wind on the seagrass metabolism. And hopefully this is all going to be able to come together to be able to support the long-term climate resilient efforts by measuring the ecosystem services like carbon sequestration and then hypoxia prevention. And through the work, I hope that we're going to be able to seek the position at Kerteminde Fjord as a model for as a model site for seagrass-based climate monitoring, and to be able to highlight the critical value of conserving functioning blue carbon habitats in a rapidly changing world. And so for the study site, you could see here the map of the Kerteminde Fjord. So it is a fjord is basically a shallow estuarine system. This fjord is located off the coast of Funen, which is an island in Denmark. It's a semi-enclosed system with limited water exchange, making it sensitive to nutrient inputs, wind forcing, and stratification. Seagrass meadows are recognized globally as critical blue carbon habitats, and Zostera marina in particular is common in temperate estuaries. So I have a map here that you're able to see the locations of current Z marina meadows, which are actually rapidly declining due to human impact. However, they're really important because they perform high rates of primary production, and they play a key role in nutrient cycling, sediment stabilization, and again, they act as carbon sinks. So for my particular study area, I chose a dense eelgrass bed within the fjord. So it took some time for us to be able to decide which location we felt was best. And then this meadow in particular, we decided to choose a dense location, and so and it also serves as a biogeochemical hotspot and a potential for a long-term climate sentinel. And then for my methodology, so this is where things start getting a little bit complex here. So in order for us to be able to achieve these goals, we have to use what is called the DL oxygen method, which relies on tracking fluctuations in dissolved oxygen over 24-hour cycles. And this is done in order to estimate the gross primary production, the community respiration, and then the net ecosystem metabolism. And then ultimately, it allows us to be able to quantify the system, whether the system is autotrophic, meaning it's oxygen producing, or heterotrophic, meaning it's oxygen consuming, and how that varies by depth, time of day, and some external forcing. So in order for us to do that, we deployed 4 HOBO U26 oxygen loggers. We did this at various steps within the water column, and then the sensors recorded dissolved oxygen as well as temperature at 15-minute intervals. And then a separate logger for PAR, which is light, was captured as well on about 8 meters away from the mooring, just above the canopy level. And then we also supplemented this with wind data, which we were able to receive from the harbor at the fjord. And then for our sensor calibration, so prior to the deployment, the sensors were tested in a controlled environment. We put them in a bucket, we added oxygen, and it just continuously aerated over a 24-hour period of time. We did this in order to check for any fouling and to find the most accurate sensor. And then we crafted a custom mooring system, which was quite interesting to do. So we could measure the entire water column, because particularly they usually just have the sensors that are going to be measuring at the benthic level, but we wanted throughout the entire water column again. So we had sensor 1 here, which you can see from our conceptual image. We had sensor 1, which was located near the surface, just below our subsurface buoy. And then we had sensor 2, which was just below that in the upper to mid water column. And then we had sensor 3, which was located just above the canopy. And then sensor 4, which was located closest to the sediment. And then again, we were able to place a PAR sensor to measure light just above the canopy. We were fortunate to be able to have some engineers here at the university to be able to equip it with a brushing system, which every hour it would brush off any biofilm that could accumulate to help us more closely measure the accuracy of PAR. And then also we had our ADCP, which was also deployed directly next to it, so that we were able to avoid any shading or things like that. And then, as you can see through my images, so the clarity is not the best in these areas, and so everything was kind of attached just by a rope. So that way, if we lose one thing, we can find it in another way. Yeah, and then next, seagrass net. So as a part of this project, we were fortunate enough, just through a weird turn of events, to be able to collaborate with Seagrass Net. So Seagrass Net is an international monitoring network that uses standardized protocol to study seagrass ecosystems. Specifically, we applied the protocol to sample our Zebra marina leaf sections and then collect data on epifauna biomass, which of course, it includes small invertebrates living on or near the seagrass blades. So these organisms are important indicators of biodiversity and trophic interactions, which we can use for our research. So we decided to jump on this with them. And by measuring the epifauna alongside the Z marina shoot density, the leaf height, the growth rates, we can better understand or estimate the metabolic rate of the seagrass meadows and how it contributes to the oxygen cycling within the fjord. And then this biotic data, it's crucial for interpreting the DO oxygen fluxes that we observed from our sensor array itself. So it allowed us to be able to link changes in the oxygen concentration to the biological processes like photosynthesis and respiration. And so overall, these kind of metrics contributed to a broader effort to kind of protect the eelgrass habitats as well. So we submitted the data that we're collecting, and we're working closely with Seagrass Net for them as well. And they didn't have a lot of information on the area that we're in Denmark in particular. So we were able to complement each other quite nicely. We also did do some zooplankton sampling as well to kind of help further support the understanding of the trophic structure and the benthic pelagic coupling within the system. Okay, now this is where you guys are really going to have to hang on with me here. So oxygen flux calculations. In order for us to be able to quantify the exchange between the water and the atmosphere, we had to apply a standard mass balance approach. This method accounts for the biological and physical drivers of oxygen variability, which ultimately allows us to estimate the net oxygen metabolism and the air-water gas exchange. So the dissolved oxygen data collected by our sensor was first then converted from milligrams per liter to micromoles per liter using the molar mass of O2. And the standardization was essentially for calculating metabolic rates and ensuring comparability across all studies. It just made it easier for us in order for us to do this conversion for later on. And then in order for us to estimate the gas exchange at the surface, we incorporated wind speed, temperature data, which also influence the gas transfer velocity. And all of these environmental variables help us to be able to model how much oxygen is entering or leaving the system through the surface layer. And then, of course, once we collected the data, we had a huge amount of data points in order for us to be able to reduce high frequency noise and capture more meaningful biological patterns. We then just applied and kind of downsampled an hourly average to the sensor data, which this was particularly important for highlighting our DO cycles. So the daily rhythm of the oxygen production and consumption driven by the light and photosynthetic activity. And then we also used the DO oxygen method in order to estimate the vertical oxygen fluxes throughout the entire water column. This allowed us to be able to differentiate between the photosynthesis, respiration, and the physical mixing, especially with the sensors nearest to the Z marina canopy and then the benthic zone. Challenges and risks. So given the complexity and the potential for our sensor fouling and our data gaps, it was really important for us to be able to emphasize the redundancy and backup planning throughout the deployment. Also, Denmark was really windy, which made things really interesting, hence the reason why I'm sick right now. It hasn't been the easiest time whenever it comes to field work. Retrieving and finding the sensors was really important. And let's just say 2 anchors was definitely necessary. But multiple sensors at varying depths did help us ultimately to be able to validate the results and reduce the risk of total data loss. We were able to have some flexible scheduling here, which helped with kind of mitigation and ensuring that everyone is kind of having their needs met since there's a lot going on here. And then next here, for training capacity building. So this is probably one of my favorite parts. Beyond the science, I was able to actually initiate training sessions for the incoming master students who's actually going to be continuing this project that I'm working on. So essentially, we did establish the protocol for the Fjord system here, and they're going to be moving forward with it. And so I was able to teach them the deployment techniques, the calibration procedures, as well as the data analysis workflows, ensuring ultimately the long-term continuity of this research. And as well, I was able to partake in a 2-week fieldwork seminar for incoming bachelor students on fieldwork. So they were able to see just how jarring it can be, I suppose, going out there into the fjord and getting their hands dirty. So this was, for me, probably one of my favorite parts of the project so far. And then here for our expected impact application and our next steps. So this project, essentially, it can have the potential to make several meaningful contributions, not only scientifically, but also practically. First, by capturing the high resolution data across the full water column, where, as I mentioned, typically it's just the benthic level. We aim to be able to understand further benthic pelagic coupling and how oxygen dynamics near the sediment relate to processes at the surface, especially when it comes to seagrass dominated systems. And ultimately, the insights in the oxygen fluxes and a hypoxia risk will also help to inform coastal management strategies, particularly when it comes to hypoxia mitigation in the vulnerable Danish fjord systems. So this is increasingly important in the face of warming waters and nutrient loading that we're seeing happening today. And our multiple sensor setup and deal analysis approach provides a foundation for enhancing long-term monitoring across Denmark's coastal systems. So this protocol could essentially be adopted or adapted by other fjords in Denmark as a monitoring initiative to generate comparable results and possibly policy relevant data. And on the modeling side, the project does ultimately support improvements in gas flux modeling and accurate estimations of ecosystem metabolic rates, including gross primary production and ecosystem metabolism. So, and then here, what we have observed so far. If you guys haven't noticed a pattern, there's quite a lot of jellyfish in the area. So that's why there's a lot of jellyfish images here. But so far, we were able to reserve strong deal oxygen variability near the surface and within the Z Marina canopy, particularly with sensor 1 and sensor 3. So these sensors, sensor 1, which is at the surface, sensor 3, which is just above the canopy, they captured clear daytime peaks and nighttime drops in oxygen driven by photosynthesis during the day and then respiration at night. And the pattern highlights the importance of light and driven primary production, especially at the canopy where the seagrass thrives. And then on the other hand, and with sensor 4, near the seafloor, it recorded much more stable and lower oxygen levels. So this suggests that the benthic respiration dominates in this layer with minimally photosynthetic activity due to low light availability. And these conditions point to possible oxygen limitation in the benthic boundary level, particularly during periods of thermal stratification and limited mixing. And then the temperature differences, which we were able to clearly highlight between the surface and the bottom sensors, revealed periods of vertical thermal stratification, especially on calm, sunny days. And this layering reflects mixing and reinforces the oxygen gradient in the water column. So Although these stratification events were often disrupted by wind, which we were able to perceive the wind data from the Kerteminde marina, the higher wind speeds were associated with increased vertical mixing and reduced oxygen gradients, while the calm conditions allowed the stratification to kind of persist, which ultimately led to stronger deal oxygen cycles near the surface and depletion near the bottom. And then finally, when it came to our PAR data, the light data that we collected near the canopy, it showed that the light level availability consistently supported photosynthetic activity throughout the day. And then the midday oxygen peaks closely followed light intensity, confirming that light is the primary driver of the deal oxygen dynamics in the shallow seagrass system. And then our results so far. So I do have about another month here just from my research, and then, like I said, it's going to be continued following my departure. But overall, to conclude, so the data that we've been able to retrieve provides strong support for evidence-based conservation and are crucial for validating climate resilience and carbon offset claims in order to be able to relate this to seagrass restoration ultimately. And our findings do contribute to a deeper understanding of how coastal carbon sinks behave under climate stress and how Z. Maria in particular responds to oxygen fluctuations and why protecting water quality and ensuring light availability is critical. And more importantly, which I think is the most important, is that honestly, our monitoring approach can now directly support policy goals under the EU Water Framework Directive by offering real-time metabolic indicators for habitat health and protection. So overall, we saw that there was deal oxygen monitoring, which gives us a powerful window into the ecosystem metabolism. Then we have the Z. Marina meadow, which we're able to see acts as a dynamic carbon producer. And then the Kerteminde Fjord, not only does it display vulnerability, but it also displayed resilience during this time, and depending on the mixing and the light conditions. And ultimately, the work we've done kind of lays the foundation for long-term, now student-led monitoring of coastal ecosystems, which supports both science and stewardship. And then I did want to include just a small graph here, an example from our deployment 1 and our sensor 1. So here you're able to see kind of what the data looks like once I'm able to pull it off and interpret it. So you can see the deal oxygen variations across the water column, and this one shows high variability near the surface and the canopy, especially during sunny days, reflecting intense photosynthesis. The light and temperature patterns follow expected deal trends, but we also observed sudden drops in dissolved oxygen associated with the low wind speeds or overcast days, especially in the bottom sensor. And then these oxygen curves give us kind of an insight into the metabolic activity at each layer of the water column. And when compared the dissolved oxygen trends with the light and the wind during windless days, we were able to observe the stratification with lower mixing between surface and the bottom layers. And then the wind and light temperature interact to influence both the photosynthesis and the air, sea, and gas exchange. So this all reinforces the importance of physical processes in shaping the biological outcomes. So thank you for your time and your patience. I wanted to especially thank Seagrassnet for the collaboration here, and my the university that I'm at over here, as well as my supervisor, who was very patient with me on the whole calculations processes, and the MARRES team, of course, for supporting me on this absolutely crazy endeavor. So, any questions?
Start?
Thanks, Madison. Yes, Martin, of course, you can have the floor.
Thank you, Madison, for the presentation. I have two questions. The first one, did you observe a correlation between epifauna density and variation of oxygen in the water column?
So we were able to see, well, so far we've only been able to actually do about 2 samples thus far. So that we're going to be continuing on and processing most of the data actually within the next 2 weeks or so with the help of some students. But we're able to see that the impact is actually quite low on respiration. So we don't expect much of much of an impact, but again, we will be able to see in the coming weeks, and we actually are going to be submitting an article about it. So if you're interested on the information, yeah.
Thank you. And another question that is a double question. Do you think the data collected can how do you think the data collected can inform the local management or for example a restoration strategy, and how would you adapt this method in other places, for example in Mediterranean Sea?
So for Denmark in particular, as I had mentioned, there had been they kind of about 15 years ago called for a bit of an emergency in the area, stating that a lot of the fjords were extremely unhealthy. Some of them were declared ecologically dead. However, the Kerteminde Fjord, they had decided to halt the dumping of waste in this fjord in particular about 10 years ago. So they have previous data that we were able to compare our current data to in order to see the change that this has impacted. So the area is actually quite regulated in order to do any fishing, boating in this area long term. You do have to get a permit. So basically showing the comparison of when there was no regulation versus when there is regulation now, we're able to see the difference that, hey, actually, even though the system was quite vulnerable, it still is quite vulnerable, that there was able to be a change and that it was able to kind of recover. And there was actually a lot more biodiversity than we had anticipated. And I think this is what was most shocking for the people that have been long-term researchers when it comes to the fjords in Denmark. And I think definitely when it comes to the Mediterranean, to be able to apply such extensive research methods, to be able to fully kind of quantify the health of the ecosystem, I mean, I think it's worth it, although it is quite a lot of work and it's quite extensive trying to measure again, from the light to the wind to the oxygen, all sorts of these different stressors. But I think ultimately it gives you the most accurate assumption of the health of the ecosystem. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you, Madison. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, Jean-Vincent this time, and we will finish with Guillaume.
Thank you for this presentation. I have a few questions about the methodology.
Yes.
So the first one is how can you make the differences between the production of oxygen of the seagrass, of the phytoplankton, of the algae? How can you make the difference?
So we're going to be testing not only in areas where there is dense Zostera marina, we're also testing in areas where there is lacking. So the floor consistently has algal mats across the Kerteminde Fjord, and so we're going to be testing as well in this location, as well as we are with the seagrass bed. So we're able to kind of compare the difference in respiration. But again, this is kind of going to be something going on beyond my departure, at least I hope. And maybe we'll be able to find some more information in the coming weeks on this answer, but I guess we'll be able to see. But as of now, the methodology is just focusing on the current region and not so much on the epifauna and the zooplankton.
Okay, and so my next question is about the methodology. The why this methodology and not another one present in the scientific bibliography?
Honestly, I feel that it was my supervisor who was the one that through our research prior was able to find out this was our best establishment. So I did had added a methodology sheet. I don't know if you guys were able to have access to it, where it shows all of our calculations and our step-by-step method in order for us to be able to kind of quantify the health of the system and the metabolism. But really, it was just through kind of reviewing a bunch of literature and through my supervisor's previous experience working in remote sensing in benthic habitats. So, yeah, I suppose that's a question for him. But I just kind of jumped on board and I'm just taking it as I go.
And okay, thank you. And just last question.
Yeah.
For the results. Have you make the comparison between your results and other results about other Zostera, maybe Zostera noltei or other species, in terms of oxygen or metabolism?
No, we actually haven't. I haven't thought about this, and no, we haven't done any comparisons when it comes to the metabolism of the different kind of species. I think it would be definitely interesting going forward. And from what I understand, the university actually they're applying for funding currently as well. So I think they plan on getting a couple PhD students going onto this project in the coming year, and maybe. I will put this down as a suggestion because it does sound quite interesting. But I do know that working with Seagrassnet, they're able to make, through our research and giving them our data that we've received, they could possibly make this comparison themselves as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Guillaume, you have the floor.
Yes, to be honest, the question I had has already been asked. So, but I just want to go back on the question of you guys about the transfer of methodology towards other ecosystem or Zostera in other areas. So if it was, if you were to be conducting this kind of assessment in another place, let's say the Mediterranean, for example, is it easily replicable to other species, such as, for example, Posidonia oceanica? And do you think that it's easily replicable outside of a fjord, because a fjord is the semi-closed portion of the coast? So do you see any issues or barriers to replicate the methodology elsewhere?
No, I think, and this was the most exciting part of what we realized, is it's definitely possible to replicate it in different ecosystems. So with Posidonia, for example, it would just require more sensors, the deeper the water column. And so, but also it doesn't necessarily, so we were able to split it up in accordance with what we felt was most beneficial. And so we started, again, our water column was only 2 meters deep, so it wasn't that difficult for us to be able to keep the mooring out. I think essentially the only thing that it would require would to be more field work, more attention to the sensors. So we go out about once a week in order to ensure that everything's still stable and there. Again, there's not much movement in these kind of shallow coastal systems, but in a more open system, then I think it would definitely maybe require a bit more attention, but it's definitely possible that it could be, the methodology could be used in various other environments.
Thank you. And maybe one last quick question, and Martin already mentioned it, but when it comes to give the information to, let's say, decision makers or managers of protected areas, they don't necessarily have the understanding of all the scientific approach. I didn't have, for example, during your presentation, and something can be some things can be quite complicated to understand. So did you have some exchanges, some presentation of your work with some people that are not scientists, and how do you work and articulate your work with this kind of people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually in 2 weeks, we're going to be working, they're doing kind of a lecture for the local young community in the Kerteminde Fjord. And so we're actually going to be going out there, kind of explaining what we do in layman's terms, and the importance of having a healthy ecosystem for not only the environment, but also the economy in the area. It used to be a big fishing town, a fishing area. Now there's not so much this anymore. But if we're able to maintain and keep this ecosystem healthy, so not dumping waste in it, we're able to see that, yes, now there is an extensive amount of more crabs and mussels in the area, and we might be able to actually use this to benefit economically. But I'm actually quite excited. I've been working on preparing a presentation for the youth in the area, and we've actually have deployed an ADCP with an interactive screen, so they're able to see more, again, in layman's terms, how this works. And we are building like a small kind of pool system so that they're able to kind of see the different species and keep them engaged. Because I know it can be quite dense for me. Of course, it took me quite a while to be able to fully comprehend the kind of scientific jargon, I suppose. But ultimately, yeah, it's not as difficult as you would think, I suppose.
Thank you for your answers.
Okay, thanks, Madison. Is there any question from the audience? No. All good. Okay. Well, thanks again, Madison. You had also some congrats online, so I'm just sharing a little bit from the others.
Thank you, guys.
Again, thanks so much. Well, for you online, it's over for today, but of course, we will come back tomorrow at 9 a.m. We will have the session 2 of Science and Society about fisheries and communities, and the session 2 also of the Blue Manager about blue value chain. So do not hesitate to come back tomorrow morning. And for now, we will stay in the room because it's a private session now with Gilles. So thanks for watching, and we will wait for you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.